Hello, this is Mrs. Ringrose for Algebra 1, and pretty soon we're going to get ready to solve equations. But before we jump into that, I thought first it would be nice to know what a solution to an equation is. And before we can talk about solutions, we need to know what an equation is. So an equation is with an equal sign. All right, so that doesn't sound too scary. So something like 3 plus 5 equals 8 would be an equation. That's actually a true equation because 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. We could also have a false equation like 2 minus 7 equals 10. And then we can have something with a variable like 3x equals 9. So all those are considered equations because they do have an equal sign. Things that are not an equation are the expressions that we've been working on. This is an expression. It's not an equation. Just maybe a number would be not an equation. Also something like an inequality, where we read it as 3 times a number minus 2 is less than 10. There's other inequality symbols that you might be familiar with, but in a nutshell, an equation is something with an equal sign. A solution to an equation is the value that makes the equation true. All right, so we're going to learn how to solve equations, and then we want to make sure that we know that it really is a solution because it makes the equation correct. It makes it true. All right, and then lastly, before we jump into solving linear equations, it might be nice to know what linear equation is. We're going to be graphing them later on in the year. And a linear equation is basically something that makes a straight line. And you can spot it just by looking at the equation by knowing that the variable has an exponent of 1. All right, so even though we don't write it in, if there's no exponent, we assume that it's 1. And anything that has an exponent of 1 is going to be linear. Not linear would be something that's a squared or a cubed function. Or if the variable is underneath in the denominator. Those are examples of things that are not linear. So I don't know if you can still fit this, but it makes a line. All right, so I know this is probably your first video with me, and if you need to pause me at this time to make sure you get all the notes, go ahead and do so. That's the great thing about a video is you can pause me and rewatch something if you weren't sure if you heard everything I said. All right, and then some examples on what it is I'm expecting you to do. Okay, so before we can go ahead and start solving for equations, we need to know if something is really a solution to an equation or not. And to do that, we want to look at the equation and see if it's true or false. So we're going to do that with a couple of examples with just numbers. Is 8 plus 2 equal to 10? You would say yes, and you would write for me that it's true. The next example, you ask yourself, is 8 minus 3 equal to 0? Well, there's some evaluating you want to do just to make sure that you know that 8 minus 3 is 5, and you're going to ask yourself, is 5 equal to 0? And the answer is no. So this would be a false equation. All right, but jumping into what we need to do is we want to be able to go back and check our work. So this one is considered an open equation. And it's open because we don't know what the value for x is yet, so we can't actually say if it's true or false. But the next example, we're told that x equals 1. So we want to evaluate that and find out if it's actually true or false. So that's why we were working on our substitution skills. If I put 1 in there, and I do all the math out and use my order of operations, I find out that 6 plus 3 is 9, which is not 21. So this is a false equation, and we would write that 1 is not the solution. or you can just write false for me, either one. Looking at the same equation, let's find out if 5 is the solution. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put 5 in for x, and make sure you're multiplying it and using your order of operations correctly. And we find out that, yep, 6 plus 15 is 21. So this is true. And you could write for me that 5 is the solution. Oops. I still can't spell, even on a video. Okay, moving on. And again, I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast. I just don't want this video to be too long. If you kind of get the idea, you can try the rest of the slides on your own and then go back and look at the answers, or you can have me check it off. This is something that you can do in class with me helping you out. But basically, again, we're just going to try to find out if these values that I'm giving you makes the equation true. So this one, I've got 2 x's. So I want to make sure I put this number in both places. And I didn't do this on the first slide, but really I want to put a question mark over that equal sign because I don't know if it's equal yet. But I'm going to evaluate each side separately. So that side is 4, and then 2 plus 3 is 5. And then you ask yourself, is 4 equal to 5? And if the answer is no, you can write not a solution, or you can just write false for me. All right, this is when x is 2, this is a false equation. It does not make it true. All right, same equation. Let's try a different value. We're trying 3. So 2 times 3, does that equal 3 plus 3? Let's find out. 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 plus 3 is 6. And then you ask yourself, does 6 equal 6? And that's true. So this equation is true when x equals 3. So you could say 3 is the solution. All right, next one, we're working on some squareds. So I'm going to try when x is equal to 3. Let's see if that makes the equation true. 3 squared minus 4. Does that equal 5? First I have to evaluate the exponent. And then I can do the math. 9 minus 4 is 5. So 5 is equal to 5. That's true. So 3 is a solution. So here's something interesting. The next equation looks the same. We already found out that 3 is the solution. Why should I even try to see if another number is the solution? Well, I'm going to do it anyway. Remember to use your parentheses if you're evaluating this in a calculator. A negative times a negative makes it positive, and 3 squared is 9, so it's still a positive 9. And 9 minus 4 is 5. 5 equals 5. So yeah, negative 3 is also a solution. So that equation actually, although it's not linear, so we're not going to be doing that, it has 2 solutions. Okay, and then finally I have a couple more examples for you. Again, if you get the idea and you want to stop here, you can. I have this next equation where I'm going to put 0 in, see if this is true. So my first step should be to substitute it in everywhere, and then my next step should be to use order of operations. This is going to be 0 plus 3. This is still 3 times 0 plus 1. 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 times 1 is also 3. So this is a solution because 3 equals 3. And using the same equation, let's try another number. Let's try 5. Totally different than 3, right? So I'm going to put 5 into where x is. Use my order of operations to evaluate. And I get, does 33 equal 3 times 11? Well, 3 times 11 is also 33, so this is true. It's a solution. And this is a special kind of equation that we're going to talk about at some other point. It turns out that any number will be a solution to that equation. All right, so I do want you to go ahead and try the next two by yourself. Have them checked off by Mrs. Ringrose or Mrs. Lang. Hopefully this helped you get started off on how to find out if a value is a solution to an equation. And we'll work on some harder stuff next time. Thank you.